Hello and welcome to Top of the World. If it's your first time, I'm Simon and these are my potatoes. Now, I did say when I started this is an experiment and I personally don't think it's gone well. This was supposed to be an easy grow potatoes that don't involve digging. I can't do any digging. I'm having trouble doing the basics right just now. My back, we can't dig, okay? We are going to somewhat test our back by lifting these up. Now, the idea is you plant the potatoes on the ground and then you earth up, as it were, with straw. I've used hay, probably not good. And then you keep earthing up, but you're not using earth, you're using... So it's had a lot, an awful lot. What's different about this year to every other year is it has rained constantly for months. It is the worst summer I can ever remember for rain. So much so, the ground here dries up and everything dies. When the creek stops running, which is really after the snow melt has come off the winters, then you're on a ticking time clock to how much you water and how you keep moisture in the soil, because it's a glacier bed, silted up. It's sand and a little bit of like silt, clay, but it's sand and silt. So it dries and everything dies. In this very plot, we've had 3 failures so far. It's got no nutrients on it. It's really bad soil. So I thought, well, let's try growing above ground and it's wet. So I do know the hay inside is black and rotten. Probably not going to be very good potatoes. I do know they don't look very good either. Right, it's a good indication. So, we're going to see how we're doing. That's what we're going to do. Oh, worms. Now there's something you don't see too much of here. That's a big worm. That is. Well, that's a potato. And there's a small one. Is that it? No. Okay. Right, that one plant. They're small. They are small. So that's what we got out of that one plant. Well, I don't think that's too bad actually. I've still got to bend down, and is that little one going to fall through a hole? We don't want them falling through holes. I've got another one here. The process of lifting the potatoes through. Wow. Looks like this has got quite a few. In fact. Okay. Well, I'm not dissatisfied with that, because if that is what I'm going to get out of all these potatoes, now bearing in mind, also they're all different varieties. I think that's alright. I do. Now they are small, but that's what I got out of 2 plants. And we got 50 or 60 plants in a row, and I don't know, 10, 12 rows. get there? 5, 6 kilos. 6 kilos of potatoes from one row of no dig planting. I don't feel that's good. I feel I can get more than this out of a single pot, which involves very little work. That's what I feel. However, can I get more potatoes out of that, out of a single pot here? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. For a no dig experiment, do I feel it's worked? I'd have hate to have dug up a full row and only got that many potatoes, I've got to say. However, there was more to just planting potatoes in the no dig system. We've explained the type of soil here. Right, I'll do it one more time. It's sand. There's a bit of silt in it, but it's sand. It dries out really quickly, and as far as I'm concerned, this small patch here has been dead. And I've tried to grow in it so many times. 2 years ago, I put all manner of rotten shavings and materials that I had. Did that go down very well with Thomas? No, but there we are. There's a lot of things didn't go down very well with Thomas. Anyway, and then last year I put more organic matter in it and used the arrows and ploughed it in. And this year there's been, I'm gonna say, if each one of those weighs 2 tonne, 4 tonne of bad hay gone on top of it. What does that look like in there? I've never seen worms. Excuse me. I've never seen worms in this abundance so big anywhere here. There's only one place you can find worms that are as big and juicy as this, and this is, well, I don't even know if I want to mention where that is. Anyway, on this ground anywhere here, I knew there were some worms, but nothing like there is. Also, there's lots of bugs and creepy things in the soil and in the straw, which is what we want. Right, we need to put everything back into this, and we need things to break down the soil and to break down the nutrients. And by doing this, just with this first row, I'm going to reserve what I think about the amount of potatoes out of this row, because we've got different varieties. I think for the amount of work and the amount of money I spent on seed potatoes, and then the amount of diesel and effort this took, that's not good enough. What I've got there is not good enough per row. It isn't. But is there a huge benefit to the soil which I can't actually put a price on? Yes, because we can't get oodles of horse manure and cow manure like I could. You know, I mean, I had a mate at a horse farm. It'd come in by a truckload. But here, no. And everybody expects you to buy it. You know, in certain places, in the UK and the US, these places produce so much of it. If you're going to turn up with a truck and take it away, they're like, thank you very much. And that's fair, because they got too much and you need some of it. So would I go and pay for manure? No, I wouldn't, because it's, you know, somebody else can do that. Right. Okay. So I'm going to take these potatoes back to my Sarah, because she's going to be really happy, because we ran out of potatoes last night. We had the last of them. And that's what kind of spurred me to lift this first row, really. Yeah. But the more I look at it, I don't know, the happier I'm getting, because that's more potatoes than I had. But I'm not sure about the cost, how much it... Did I work out the overall costs? No. Peas. You've got to take the shell off, haven't you? Like this. One for Daddy. One for Casper. One for Daddy. One for Casper. Yeah, there are peas here. Isn't there? Peas. And we have to take them out the shell, and it's a source of food, isn't it? He's Casper's chilled out now and gone in the van. But for the first 2 rows, he's got my back, like literally got my back, because as I've already explained, I'm now working in a way that I've got my back towards where we had the confrontation with the bear. Do I believe the bear is a human killing bear? No, it isn't. I'd have killed it, or I'd have got somebody to kill it. No, but when you're on your hands and knees this time of year, could he see an unfair advantage or an advantage in his favour? Yeah, he could. Anyway, if he was even close, Casper would have alerted, and he didn't. Okay, so row 1, you've seen the results of. Row 2, about the same as row 1. Row 1, row 2. Okay, row 3 and row 4 was a different variety. So that's about the same as row 1. Row 2, or row 3 as it is, similar. Row 3, row 4, more. This actually physically feels heavier than 3 and 2, albeit they're looking quite consistent. I would like to stop here because whilst it doesn't involve digging, still got to be on my hands and knees. But we're now to this 3rd variety I planted, which is these tall ones. Now, I chose varieties 1, row 1 and 2, and I chose variety 2, row 3 and row 4. My Sarah went to town to get me more seed potatoes, and she came back with much smaller bags, rows 5 and 6, different variety. And they're taller, and these ones are still in flower. Right, and we've got some scab on the leaves. Right, I don't like this, because this is looking a bit like blight. Well, it can't be blight because we don't have blight in the soil. Is that even a fucking potato? Oh, that's a weed next to the potato. Yeah, so there's things about this variety that are not looking good. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Like the old black spot on the leaves is not good. So what I find fascinating here is, and we'll get on to rows 6 and 7 and 8 in a minute. What I find fascinating here is they've grown potatoes since the beginning of the time, because it's the only thing that grows here. And that knowledge has been passed down from father to son to father to son to father to son. Was that a good idea? No, because they have antiquated planting methods here which produced relatively low yield, albeit potatoes produce low yield here, but they also don't understand the first thing about rotation. So this is like the small farmers, homeowners, yeah, I'm sure the bigger farmers know. So they grow their potatoes endlessly in the same place, and they know nothing about blight. Now, blight isn't so common here, but I know a lot about blight and how land is completely ruined by it. So potatoes, they're a good crop to grow, but they do like to introduce disease. And on that note, rows 7 and 8. Well, how do you know so much about horticulture and agriculture, Simon? Rows 7 and 8. Last year's seed potatoes, 7, 8. What I find interesting about 7 and 8, some of them don't look good. Okay, but generally there's a larger growth on top than the first 4 rows. Also, right, they've consistently sprouted, as opposed to the shop bought seed potato, which did not consistently sprout. There's a few yellow ones. We are getting to that time of year, right? We are. However, the best way of explaining it is there's far more consistent and far greater top growth on last year's seed potatoes than the store-bought seed potatoes. Even here, where it's a little thinner, there's still more consistent and heavier top growth than the first 4 rows. This variety, the taller variety, that's very consistent. There's virtually no gaps, which means every single seed potato I planted sprouted. I'm really, really curious to see what's underneath here. So, the first 2 short varieties that were shop bought have not performed what I would call well and have not grown consistently. The most consistent of all appears to be this variety, which isn't a variety that my Sarah chose specifically. She just bought seed potatoes, and knowing her, it was probably because they were cheap. I don't know, but I hope the yield underneath is as good as the growth on top. So I'm kind of disappointed with the first 2 varieties, albeit they have produced more potatoes than we had. So is that more potatoes came out than went in? Yeah. However, does that amount of weight justify the cost of the seed potato? Do you know, I didn't go into that level of depth, unfortunately. Do I have the varieties written down? Yeah, I do. But did I staple the receipts to that? I don't know. I was more into experimenting to see whether I could grow it above ground with hay. I got to tell you, for the yield I'm getting so far for these first 2 varieties, first 4 rows, I'm not convinced at all, given the amount of work I had to do. Was that more work than earthing up? I can't earth up. I can't get into that bended position nor can I dig the trench. So that was a no-go. Could you do this if you can get on your hands and knees? Yeah, I can get on my hands and knees, right? That's not a particularly, as long as I don't. Anyway, what I'm saying is, if you have damaged discs, vertebrae, nerves, can you still plant potatoes if you do it above ground? You still got to move the hay. I don't know. I've got to find a way of doing this so that it works for me. So I'm kind of curious now. I want to stop yabbing and have a cup of coffee, and I'm going to lift another row. Really, I should quit now, right? But I'm really curious about rows 5 and 6. Rows 5 and 6. I'm just really... I suppose I'm quite curious now, because the first 2 varieties have been consistent. I wouldn't even like to say what the difference is between the varieties. Or are they the same variety? Did I plant 4 rows the same? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I've got 2 different varieties, but I'm not seeing any major difference in the size or shape of the potato. Okay, curiosity's got the better of me. Now, did any of them go into the ground? No, they all grew on the surface. Okay. Yeah, not sure about that. No. Early indications are none of them actually penetrated the soil. I know it's hard for you to see, I'm sure that looks like good soil. But it's mostly sand. It's very, very light soil. Very, very light soil. And it'll blow away, dry out and blow away like dust. Okay, well that's a bit. I don't think that's very good from two plants. That looks like a lower yield than the other variety. We have got a lot of these. Right, you can't argue. Oh, you can't argue about the size of your worms. Okay. Looks like a similar. More from that plant. Well, there might have been two plants there. Yeah. not convinced. Not convinced. Okay, this variety. We think, without weighing it and visually, it produced slightly more. So this variety was much happier growing in the hay. This variety and this variety, or the first 4 varieties, they seem to want to push into the soil, but this was quite happy growing on top of the soil and in the hay. So when I was moving the hay away, I had to be careful and feel it to see if there was any potatoes in there. So we've got another row like that, but we've got 3 rows left. Well, I can't lift those now. We're going to have to stand upright for a bit, go and find something else to do. So we've got 3 rows left. The other row of the variety of that, and then 2 rows of last year's seed potatoes. That's a few days later, and I must have had a frost or 2. That's not gone well. Okay, well, I've got 3 rows left to do, so let's get up the last 3 rows. So out of the last of the tool rolls, the red potatoes, that looks about the same as every other row. And then we're into the last 2 rows of our own last year's potatoes that we put down a seed. So that's 2 rows. So that was a complete waste of time, because that looks about the same as what I planted in these last 2 rows. So that didn't work. Did that work? But that's a lot more potatoes than I planted. So my conclusion on this, because it was an experiment, if you had to buy the hay, you want a non-starter before you start. If you had to spend any more time than I did, you want a non-starter. Does the value of the potatoes I've got outweigh, if purchased from a store at today's prices, the potato seed? No. Or yes. In as far as I spent more on potato seed than the value of the potatoes I got out. So, as far as experiments go, that didn't work. Have I introduced a lot more nutrient into the soil? Yep. Are there worms there that weren't there before? Yes, the soil's going to be better for it. But if you had to survive, based on what little money you had to buy the seed potato, to plant the potato to get you through the winter, you were going to die. That's it. That didn't work. So we can't dig in the ground, and that was equally as bad on my back. It wasn't equally as bad on my back because I'm crunched up. Somebody's upset at the chickens because I've got them out running around. So we're going to be potatoes in containers, and then so then what do I do with this bit of ground? Now I've got it I don't know, but we're not doing that again. That's far too much work with all the hay, barrowing backwards and forwards, and that didn't work. We're in containers now. Yeah, maybe a cereal or some kind of crop like that, I don't know. But for potatoes, experiment failed. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.